So the aim is to try and imagine the agency of the future. To set the scene, just a quick few thoughts around where the agencies are at the moment. We've got, video on the rise. It's probably going to triple in the UK in terms of spend, so that's a good thing for the agencies. 60% of the UK's digital spend is programmatic, so obviously programmatic is a big feature in this, but that's not all we're talking about. Today we want to think about the agencies as a whole, not just the digital and programmatic piece. Top lines for big agency groups, generally reasonably positive. They're still growing. WPP's had a few bumps in the road, which people may have enjoyed. But then, there's some really interesting acquisitions going on from the big agency groups with Havas, with Publicis buying Sapient, which is huge in my opinion, and I think that could be an interesting point to explore as well. So it's not all bad, but on the other side of the fence, and because a lot of us are concerned with digital, programmatic, trading desks, there's some challenges to the agency model. And let's start at the beginning with trust and the ANA report. So does anyone on the panel want to go first and address the ANA report and also what ISBA is talking about for its members and transparency and where that puts agencies right now?
Sure.
You're going to go first?
Brave man. First. Yeah. When that report came out, I was quite happy for it to actually happen. For a long time, within Publicis Group, I can't really talk for any other agency holding company. We've been pushing most of our advertisers to look at what we're doing as an agency and look at our contemporaries and our external vendors as well, like ad networks, managed services under the same light. I think that was a step in the right direction towards casting the net on everyone in the marketplace, although obviously it did focus on the agencies in a general sense. But I think now you're actually seeing that conversation kind of go on its next logical step with the kind of recent pieces in the news around like where does the digital dollar go, where are the SSPs playing, where are the individual technology vendors that make up that supply chain. So that ANA report was like the first step into what could be 6 or 7 different reports onto each different component of the supply chain. So for us, it was kind of like, that's good, it's at least starting that conversation.
I was saying, we talked about this when we briefly met, actually, and you had some opinions about transparency in terms of can the clients handle the amount of data that could go with full transparency?
In regards to the NNA report,
yeah.
I think it's great because it's a guideline, right, for the future. And everybody has a different opinion of what transparency is. There are clients who want to understand how it works on the operational side. There are clients who are cost focused, but in general, I don't believe that it would be you could handle that much data in terms of like we had the trading desk, then we go to brand trading desk. Now we have a hybrid model, and it was like 10 years ago we had the similar situation with the ad server, and we're still serving the ads for our clients, and it will be still the same, but it's just more in terms of transparency that we need to educate our clients better, as well as we need to listen to our clients, what they need.
Okay. As a client, what's your perspective on that and what it could mean for how agencies need to change?
So I'd agree with Danny. I think the ecosystem has gotten really complex on the supply side. I think the report is much needed, so it's timely, which is a good thing. I think the world we're in now is quite complex. We've talked about dual screening, et cetera, et cetera. So, even when we look at, and I listened to the bar presentation earlier, and the panel before, even when we look at viewers' habits in terms of dual screening, let's take that as the example I want to give. Any research and understanding that would come off that is highlighting the fact that the attention and the effectiveness is diluted. It's the attention's split. In much the same way, I want to draw a light comparison, a top level comparison with the types of quality and effectiveness studies that are being asked of digital. I think increasingly the research and the material that we use to look at effectiveness needs to be reevaluated. But I don't think it's just online. So I think that complexity has now spread as a result of behaviors as well to old media.
I can't resist. The shoe is possibly on the other foot for you, Martin, as at least, but very polite laughter. But as a fresher, sort of more recent and next generation agency, specifying in programmatic.
Yeah.
Does it mean much to you?
I think if you look at the ANA report, I think it was broad. I think I think probably the issue is that programmatic has probably fallen into step in the same culture of rebates perhaps as other media. So I think the ANA report was broader and didn't, I think in many ways it called out the opacity of programmatic, but as part of a broader culture of rebates that are pervasive in the industry. I think that, you know, transparency is great, and you can talk about it in different ways. I think one thing we talk about is operational transparency, and programmatic allows you to give that to people, whether they want it or can do anything with it. I think is definitely another question. But I also, you know, as an agency, I also get really frustrated that in being transparent, you know, we actually find it really difficult to negotiate with advertisers, because you give them a transparent pricing proposal, and they just think you're a lot more expensive. And it's a real problem. It's a real problem when you're getting, you know, you're trying to charge something and they're saying, yeah, but this and that agency can do it for 2%. And you're like, well, that's not actually true. And there's acknowledgement that they know that, but I don't think anyone knows how to fix the spiral in a way that people are in. It's a real problem. And it's not confined to agencies, it's on the advertiser side as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few things that came out of the ANA report around, I think it's something like 60% of US advertisers are likely to put their business up for pitch next year, which is a huge problem for, so perhaps good news if you want to go and win some business, but a huge problem that you guys at the big agency groups have to be so defensive and constantly pitching when there's probably other work you want to be doing. You know, it's well known that perhaps procurement has driven this to a certain extent and created the beast a little bit, but what is the right compensation model for an agency? How should you get rewarded for work, and what kind of work should it be? You know,
It's a great question, and I think, to be honest, like, agencies should be valued on the work that they deliver. Like, that's the term that everyone throws into a pitch, but it's the one that I think always gets forgotten about when it comes to procurement, because ultimately, in their eyes, it's a cost-saving game. It's potentially a downward spiral to figuring out how do we get this into our books in a way that looks great to the chief marketing officer, the chief financial officer, and ultimately the CEO. It's really hard to prove that value. But then again, there is some companies some marketers actually that do look at that value and do recognize it. Ultimately, these are some of the companies, I think you're seeing them more often now. You know, I don't want to keep using their names, but like the Ubers, the Dollar Shaves, the Netflixes, you know, they're looking at their infrastructure, they're looking at their data, they're looking at how they execute media, and they understand that at the end of the day, they need these three components to make sure that they get their next Q3 earnings call and they get a push on subscribers. So they can value it that way. But they're not, by no means, not guilty of approaching everything the same way old marketers do. They are sometimes still guilty of doing that.
yeah, okay.
But the model, programmatic is changing the model of what agencies do, and I think compensation needs to keep up with that, because I think programmatic is, ironically, very labour intensive compared to the way you know, we used to do things. You know, I started off in print as well, and make a booking, see you later, big lunch.
Yeah, happy days.
You know, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. Trying to bring it back. But programmatic, you know, once you start a campaign, that's only a fraction of the work. So you need much more infrastructure. You have to pay for technology. You have to pay for people that optimize campaigns. You have to pay for people that analyze data. It's a really big change in what you're asking an agency to do, and that, you know, the model of remuneration needs to catch up to the fact that it's much more labour intensive, and I don't think it is at the moment.
Yeah.
And I'd agree with Martin. I think if you put another layer on top of that, if you bubble it up a bit more, you know, we often in digital, we often neglect the focus on brand as well, and brand building. So from a DR perspective, that operational efficiency and tying it right through to a back-end sale, you know, we're pretty good at that as an industry, and we're getting much better at it. But if you layer into, or if you put alongside that the branding component, you know, that question around remuneration becomes even more complex, because your risk sharing and how, you know, how we're going to gauge that, you know, it does become quite a tricky question.
Well, it is definitely. I agree as well. It's like there are much more people involved. Like, you know, I started a trading desk in Germany, and we were, you you had a trader, you get the campaign, you trade, and there was no data available. Now you need a strategist, you need insights, you need a data scientist, you optimizing data, you optimizing your media buy, you get your reporting, you attribute, and then it goes back to strategy, right? And you have to pay these people.
Let's talk about talent, actually, because I think that's another. I mean, this isn't supposed to be only negative, and we want to find a sort of picture of the future here. But talent is definitely an issue within agencies. I think it's widely known. I'll leave it as open as that. I mean, how does talent feature as you build the agency of the future? What do you do to nurture it?
It's not only agency work, by the way. It's
Yeah,
everywhere.
true. But we're talking about agencies today. But yeah.
I think one of the trends we're seeing is and it's all over the press, is this coming together of the old agency model with a consultancy. So you're seeing agency groups either creating consultancy divisions or bringing in people out of the consulting world into senior jobs. I think this is okay, but I don't think this is a solution. Personally, I think we need more people that are content focused, and generally the experience on this panel is from the media perspective. That content side, the creative side, it's not just about repurposing an ad for online, adding some buttons to a video clip or an overlay. I think built for purpose creative, creating creative narrative stories. I think that requirement and the talent side of that is absolutely crucial to success. So you're seeing some of the progressive agency groups beginning to have the creative role come back in. But I think that's a first step, and I think it's an early first step.
Well, I mean, at Havas, we launched a couple of weeks ago Havas University with a 100% programmatic program where all employees of Havas Media have to go through. And I think the only way to bring that knowledge to an employee is if, it sounds crucial, but if you track it and you scale it, because otherwise you're not able to see where the gaps are. Our technology vendors are pretty good on that, actually. Like Google has plenty of programs, Facebook has plenty of programs, and even the smaller ones like IPN Web. You want to keep up, you have to educate yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that's the only way, I think, to find talent today. Because the rest, we can teach the speaking, the selling, but finding talent to understand how it works. And another initiative we have is like we're merging creative and media into Havas Village next year. We're all going to sit in King's Cross, where we try to figure out right now how to bring up the full story from content, from on-site to off-site, from off-site to on-site, to be relevant and bring value in every step of the consumer journey.
And cutting to the chase a little bit here, but one of the problems potentially is that the agencies are unable to pay staff enough to really keep them, and there's a lot of job hopping at the lower or at the sort of more beginning phase of a career to get an extra few grand. Is that something that's possible to address?
I suppose it depends how you look at that, actually, because there is. So when we were looking to bring people into the programmatic landscape within the group, you could find someone come in for an interview with you, and their CV would be littered with the term programmatic, but mostly spent their time in search. So there's a little bit of let's put the term programmatic in there and benefit from whatever that increase in salary may be, or the increase in opportunities within a job may be. It's finding those guys that have experience, that have the knowledge, and that want to do it, which is the hard thing. So it's not necessarily about people jumping around within programmatic. Sometimes it's people jumping around outside of programmatic trying to get in, and then going for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Right, okay.
You don't necessarily want those people in your business. You want the people who are going to want to know what the intricacies of an ad server is, because that relates to how their DSP choice or selection or optimization is then informed. And they want to understand, why does a DMP matter to an ad server and a DSP?
Right.
Those are the skill sets that you're trying to find, and that you have to try and grow either within your business or you bring into your business. I wouldn't necessarily agree, though, that people are just kind of hopping around because they're not getting enough salary. It might be the other way around, that people are hopping around because there is a bit of salary there.
Right, okay.
I think also there is a correlation with ad tech venture capital money in the market.
Yeah.
I think we saw, around when a bunch of the programmatic businesses launched in the UK, there was a massive need for them to get headcount quick, and there was, we were losing people for crazy money. That has really stopped, and actually we actually see it coming the other way now. Funnily enough, as the more sustainable businesses, you've seen a lot of ad tech layoffs. There's a new hashtag.
Do you think?
And people are coming, people coming back to agencies, and we've definitely seen that a lot. But I think your, broader point about talent is around structure and the jobs that our agencies are being asked to do. I think you see the need for a lot more expertise around data, technology, even engineering. I think these skills are coming into, and I'd say one problem is I still think you see a problem at the top of agency businesses where there's a reticence to invest in it, a fear around owning and building technology. I think a lot of holding companies got burned in probably the early 2000s buying ad servers and tools that they realised were Betamax after 6 months. But there shouldn't be a fear around that. I think it's just the way things are going.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to start looking at it as well. Which is, if you open it up a little bit, the pain point for me is around ops. You mentioned the ad server side of it. Programmatic is trendy. So everyone wants to be associated with that. Where are the pain points in the industry? And it could be the engineering side, it could be the product development, but with the engineering spin on it. It could be the ad ops side, and they are pain points. But these have persisted from the beginning. If you take the skilled operators, so the end user, there it's probably more a like search, where the industry very quickly creates enough employees in terms of who can actually turn the dials and actually optimize a campaign, set a campaign up, understand how the system works very broadly. There I think we're getting to a place where we're okay. It feels that way at least. But there will always be consistent pain points because they require a very specialist skill set, and they're technically difficult. They're a bit like, it's like a software developer, and there's certain languages that are in vogue, there's certain ad servers that might come and go, and you're either skilled as a double-click operator with an API knowledge, or an Atlas API guy, or something to that effect. So you've got, there will be particular areas of pain.
Uh-huh.
Well, I think as well we need to, with programmatic, and we talk about agencies today, as you said, right? We need to refocus and revalue certain jobs we have in the agency as well. Like the media planner lost more and more in value comparing this chain of buying, and I think we will get to a stage where, for example, we say a trader should trade and not do anything else, and we thinking of having a system where the media planner is able to work with data. So the job of the media planner should change. You will work with data, you work with other people that help you to attribute across various of channels to generate a programmatic plan, so that the trader only needs to trade and focus on that.
Yeah.
And we need to do that. We cannot focus this only on one entity, because that's what we did the last years.
Okay. Thank you. So let's start looking to the future. And by the way, audience, if you want to answer some questions, we'll leave a bit of time. Maybe if there's a lot of people who want to ask questions, we'll leave quite a lot of time towards the end, so you can really get involved as well. So I think you've sat there very politely all morning. So that will come up. How do you think agencies are really going to grow in the future? So there's some really interesting acquisitions, and I'm quite interested to hear from Danny a little bit about what the Sapient purchases mean and how that's bubbled up. But could it be actually? Is it going to be an growth through acquisition or through actually developing your own IP? Could it be devolving or getting rid of some stuff? Like, we don't really want to be involved in that anymore. How do you see the sort of corporate level growth, how it's going to happen for agencies and the evolution as well? I'm going to start with Martin, actually, if you don't mind, because you've got a nice clean path so far, I think, with your business.
I think agencies are in great health. You said that from the start. I think they're acquisitive, rightly so. I think holding companies have seen a need to bring more, to accelerate programmatic within their businesses, and have been acquisitive. You've seen that with everyone really, with the Merkle purchase, with Exchange Lab, with all these guys, and I think it's acknowledgement that this is not a fad. This is kind of happening now, and actually bringing expertise in that can accelerate that is a really good thing. So I think people are trying to plug a potential talent gap very quickly by doing that. But the model is changing. It's changing before everyone's eyes. I think my perception of what I see at the holding companies is, you've got 200,000 people, and you've got more people still buying press than involved in programmatic. You're trying to steer a super tanker in a different direction really, really, really fast. And there's massive structural changes going on at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say the strong point of agencies, I think, and I'd wholeheartedly agree. They're in a very strong place. They're hubs of even on the media side of creativity, innovation. There's a lot of it's areas where people can in the old programming jargon where people can play. And out of that comes value that can be passed on to the client. I think the challenge is exactly that the business structure doesn't support that play and that innovation as much, and as a result of that, clients aren't yet appreciating that value. For me, it's still, marketing and media and the nexus of that between the agency and the client is probably the most exciting place to be working, or one of the most exciting industries to be working in the world today. But the value, it's not appreciated, the value that it's generating. And, we have to allow for the digital people to access, to create value for brands, let's say. We have to allow for that, and that requires a huge flexibility in terms of remuneration. How are we going to afford that? Previously we might not have had to account for that, and we can't just solely go down an accountability route. So an ROI or rev share or performance-based route. That is it's a hugely important pillar, but there has to be this kind of brand side of it, which it might have measurable metrics against it, but equally it might require a degree of freedom that we haven't yet accounted for. And that together is part of that business model problem that agencies, especially on the media side, face.
I think it's kind of been mentioned already, but we are seeing this convergence of marketing technology and advertising technology, and it is, in a way down to some really savvy marketers who I've already mentioned, realizing that data is core to their system, core to their business, and that it's all needs to be centered around that. That relies on a marketing piece of technology to handle that data internally, but then there's also rafts of ad technology on the front end of that marketing technology to allow execution and targeting and segmentation and reporting analysis. And things like Sapient, and I'm not Maurice Levy, so I can't tell you exactly why that was bought. But
he couldn't make it today.
If I was looking, externally on Publicis Group, I would say things like the CRM database of Huawei, the e-commerce product that a site like eBay might use or build themselves, or someone like Amazon licenses out, they're becoming things that as a media agency you need to now understand, because what you're executing into the marketplace is directly influencing or affecting that e-commerce product, the updating of that CRM database, the web personalization that someone's seeing when they browse somewhere else and they've come to the client's website. Those type of things now are a reality. And 5 or 6 years ago, we used to talk about connecting bricks and mortar sales to what we were doing digitally. The reality is that the pipes exist there now, and it's about getting everyone's house in order to figure out how do you connect those pipes and how do you measure back to that SKU and that product and that supply chain. How do we update how much stock is left on a certain profile on a website to what's actually available in the warehouse for this client? That type of stuff is just becoming a commonplace conversation now. So everyone has to skill up on that.
In terms of a single view of a customer, I guess, right?
Single view, and we kind of spoke about this earlier. It's companies like Deloitte, Accenture, PwC, who for a long time operated in that CRM database infrastructure arena, and are trying to think about how do they bring in marketing, how do they bring in ad technology. And to Nick's point, it's a cool time to be in that little piece of the space, because there's a lot happening, there's a lot of opportunity, and it's actually quite interesting.
I'll just add to that. We need to be careful that that's a pillar. It's a really important pillar. My focus, and I think it's come through clearly in the things I've said. My focus is not to do that at the expense of brand. And take for example the large multinationals emerging out of mainland China, for example. The biggest requirement for them is international brand building. There's absolutely a requirement in terms of SKUs and product and sales and leads and so forth. But the brand requirement is paramount. There's no doubt about that. And as the world, as the if you like, the axis of power shifts from west to east, that requirement for digital to be speaking a clearer and more accurate brand language, if you like, in digital, which we've always struggled with. my last decade in digital, we've never quite cracked that properly. And I think on the DR side or activation side, we've done a really good job of that. Hands down, we've done a great job. The brand side less so. And the drivers for me, the drivers of change in this new agency world, social media. We heard earlier Barb hasn't got access to in-app data for video. Let's say these are really important drivers of change, and it's the onus for connecting this through. That's a huge ask.
I think now is a good time to be a consultant. I'm sure you'd agree. I think people are looking for answers. Technology is a facilitator of change in this sector, and I think brands are considering what they're going to do in the future, what their model is. You've got some outliers. Taking it in-house, is that a trend? Don't know.
There was press about it not being a trend today.
Yeah, I kind of feel like there's a naivety in it. We suffered from one of our clients in-house, and I think there's the manpower and the people and that you need to get things right. I think is difficult, and if your core focus is manufacturing cars or making headache pills, I'm not sure why you would want to buy your own media, actually, because it's an expertise. There's a skill in it. So I think there's definitely a place for agencies. Is there a different type of agency? I would think we are. There's some talk for consultancies. I think it remains to be seen whether they don't seem active to me. They're trying to do anything yet.
And guys, what do you think the opportunities are for agencies? What's out there that you can grab, learn from, to really adapt or change what you're doing?
Well, we change and moving together, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying that it's easy because when the creative world and the media world were together, and then separated, now they're moving back together. Partially, I think that's necessary to close the loop. But over the last 10 years, everybody is specialized in a similar field. You have data scientists there, you have data scientists here, but we need to learn to speak the same language again, and that's actually only data, right? So I see a huge opportunity in that, as well as we need to. This business is growing so fast that we haven't focused on education. It's like most of the people I talk to today, and don't quote me on that, haven't seen an ad server, right? So from the inside out, they haven't operated an ad. So it's most likely theory most of the people talk about, which is crazy. So I think education and showing how it works, how a DSP works, or what an audience segment actually means, how you build one, helps a lot. Right? And out of that, if we do this with young talents, we generate new ideas, especially with the millennial world that have different perspectives of how media works. And I see massive opportunity and massive great new ideas coming up.
Okay, interesting.
I think, again, just to go back to these kind of new types of marketers, I saw a presentation from IPONWEB. It was a very cool presentation, looking at the market, looking at marketers as they stand, and they're incredibly kind of positive towards the companies like Dollar Shave Club. The reason, I don't know, but I would say the reason Unilever bought someone like Dollar Shave Club is because they're vastly impressed with how Dollar Shave Club managed to build its consumer base, operate its marketing, which, in all honesty, wasn't the traditional way that a marketer operates marketing, i.e. sign an IO and put some media out there. They were using their data, they were using their subscriptions, they were using social, they were using content. It wasn't necessarily about putting a display ad here, hoping to hit an audience. It was we know our audience, let's plug it into our social activation, let's think about the type of content and the ads that we can put out there that's going to create engagement. Which, when you say it on a stage like this, it sounds like everyone should be doing that already. But the reality is that not every marketer is, and not every agency holding company is aware of that. So what can agencies learn from that? They can learn from someone like Dollar Shave Club that the traditional way of buying, planning, executing, optimizing media won't fit for them. But the way of looking to how they make use of data, their infrastructure, their brand building through content or social, whatever it may be, is the way that they're interested in building their business. And to our point earlier, that's what we kind of have to shape ourselves around.
Yeah.
I'd agree. You need a client that can work with that kind of agility and that model which takes into account the data and then going to content and creation. So I think what's useful is Scott Brinker, Chief MarTech. He had an interesting chart that he's working on recently where he sees the future diverging around the MarTech stack versus content marketing.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some sort of, if you like, healthy antagonism between the two. I think it already exists, to be fair. You're seeing it with, it's these two pillars, if you like. There's the content side and the creativity side, which I think is where a heck of a lot of value still is and exists to be mined, versus where we've already been applying a lot, which is the MarTech stack and the ROI type modeling and that side of the business. So I think the opportunity for agencies would be probably on the media side is exactly that, which is moving closer towards the content creation side of it. Creating extensible campaigns, campaigns that can run and be agile in that sense. I think that's where the cool work is. It has been since before Old Spice ads, and all the various cool examples of ads that we've seen the last 5-10 years have all had some element of adaptability or campaignability. They've not just been a one-off that's been repurposed for the web.
Okay.
That's key.
I think we'll go to the audience. I just want to ask one more very quick question. Oh, sorry, we've got one already. Hands straight up. Let's go for it. Gentleman over there. I don't know if there's a microphone or whether you can just sort of shout.
Hi. I just have a question. I've seen a trend like in big companies working on the online world to do their media buying themselves. Okay, you think about online travel agencies, more and more the hotel businesses. That's one trend. The other trend is you see more and more global digital units. Nestlé has just built one in Barcelona. There's Puig that is handling all its investment from Barcelona. So you're seeing a trend towards more and more big advertisers handling all their stuff in-house, or at least as much as they can. If you pair that with programmatic, what is the role of the media agency and how does technology redefine what you guys will be doing like in 5 years? Because I see like there's a breakdown of the current system as it is.
I'm glad you used Nestlé. I work with Julian in Barcelona on Nestlé. So he's building, a really sophisticated data set, which he doesn't necessarily want to execute himself. So in that sense, we're still the execution arm for his, to be honest, for Nestlé, it'll be quite groundbreaking, centralized data set where they do their own segmentation, they do their own analysis. But ultimately, they're going to push it to their execution partners in whatever market they want to buy in. So in some sense, you get advertisers that maybe don't want to take that on and want someone to do it for them. But ultimately, even someone I think who is as forward-thinking as Nestlé still look to do some execution with other partners. That's just one example I've got. And I'm pretty sure there's quite a few marketers that say everything's done in-house. I reckon if you just looked under the hood in a few different areas, it's not necessarily completely true. But if you're a savvy marketer, if you're a big company who has lots of data and is very intelligent in how they operate it, why not? I wouldn't kind of put a barrier on stopping it. The reality is, as we've all said, do they really want to? And is it an expertise thing? Is it an expenditure thing that they need to think about before they do it? And also, everything you read in the PR and the market is very, very hyped up to some degree.
Yeah. And I see that trend rather on the data side, as you said. It's like, I guess advertisers are more comfortable managing their data themselves. So that's why we had a trend last year of, called the year of the DMPs. Like you would talk to advertisers like, do you really need a DMP with that much traffic on your website? And but still, I mean, I do understand why this happens. In terms of what's going to happen in 5 years, there will be brands who still have a brand trading desk, who have the money to invest into that, because you will need an in-house agency to handle that. You need to invest that money because, as I said before, it's an ecosystem where you need more than just a trader. Or you will have account teams that are, we just talked about this outside there, an agency that is not sitting here, like pitched with the tech providers, where you have a combination in the accounting of tech people, like who the tech company sends, with the media team sitting in-house of the advertiser, right? So you have tech expertise right there, a direct pipe to the big players or the smaller players, and the execution right there with the media people. So there are multiple ways, and we thankfully in a time where everybody can shape it the way they want it, right? There's enough technology on the ground, and there are enough smart people that can help with that, and it's up to yourself, my opinion.
Cool. Any more questions? And if you don't mind saying who you are a little bit when you answer the question, sort of name, where you work, would be great. Oh, come on, can I? Ah, there we go, over there.
Hi, Faisal, I'm the Ops Director for CNN. You've talked a lot about ad tech, martech, kind of advertiser agency relationships. Obviously, I'm going to ask about publishers now. What's the future of the relationship between agencies and publishers as you see it?
Great question.
Well, I think you need to have relationships for a start. I mean, and actually, it harks back to your question about in-housing. And I think, the story of my business was we went full circle. We were like, it's all going to be about technology and machines, and who cares about publishers? Who cares? You're just going to click a button and everything's going to self-optimize for you. And then you come to a point where you're like, I'm not really sure what you're trying to achieve, what's the advertiser trying to achieve. And then you think about, well, we can't actually do this without having relationships with publishers, because you can't ignore the supply side. So I think publisher relationships are massively important. We have a growing supply and trading team. I think they will change a little bit, but I think I don't see the role of the publisher changing. I just see the means of buying is going to become different, as we all know. But publisher relationships are equally as important as they've ever been from our perspective.
And not necessarily all about media anymore. You can have really savvy conversations about data with companies like Spotify or potentially even yourselves. We're kind of entering a period where it's not just about the ad that the publisher shows for you. It's what else can you do with that publisher that maybe isn't the outwardly facing. What is it in terms of is it something to do with content? Is it something to do with a data matchup where we look to make use of the data that you have as a publisher in a secure way that you're happy with and that you want to get compensated for? Those type of discussions seem to be happening a little bit more, I'd say, in the last year. They never happened. Yeah. They never happened before this last year.
What's driving that actually, out of interest? Is it more that the agencies are ready to listen, or you're hearing more from a bit more interesting stuff from the market, I suppose? My personal view was that maybe everyone went heavy-handed into talking about data with publishers too early. For when programmatic was just getting started, we really need to get down the buying process, the optimization process, before we start to think about huge data sets and matchups. Now I think everyone's kind of got to a level where they're comfortable with the buying, the planning, the optimization, the technology, and publishers equally are going, okay, well, maybe this is something we can think about now. There's also some companies that maybe burnt their bridges with publishers a little early on. That might just be healing now. But that's kind of my personal opinion on that. Okay.
So, well, it's additional revenue arm for them, right?
Yeah, potentially.
I think the technology only really has started to mature as well, to a point where that data transfer is easy in a secure manner, probably only in the last 6-12 months.
Anybody else got a question? God, what a polite bunch. Hello, there we go at the back.
Hi, my name is Gareth Neville. I'm head of agencies at V Interactive. My question is about how do you ensure that clients are getting the best performance when other suppliers are fairly closed off with either agency trading desks or preferred supplier lists?
Repeat that.
So from a client's perspective, how do you ensure that that client is getting the best performance that they can get if the opportunity to test outside of agency trading desks and closed PSLs, preferred supplier lists, are quite difficult to operate in for other suppliers? How do you ensure that that client is getting the best performance?
If we go back to this Nestle example, it's not really my choice if they choose to do it through their own programmatic team or not. Like the client said, I want to do this programmatically via my own technology relationships. And he may say 2 weeks down the line, I want to try this external vendor. Maybe that, you know, that the perspective that you share there might be something that was there like maybe 2 or 3 years ago when everything was centralized. For us, we do have external vendors running concurrently against what we're doing for the advertisers, or if the advertisers are doing it themselves, they operate separate as well. You know, you'll probably get into a notion of how do you benchmark what we're doing for them to what they could potentially get if they went elsewhere. That always has to exist, in my opinion, for whatever we do for our advertisers. We can't just have a siloed view of what we're doing and expect that to be the holy grail. Does that make sense?
I think
I think the onus is also on the client. The onus is on the client to stay up to date with who the new entrants to let's say the programmatic example, to the programmatic space are, what they're providing, and that's onerous. It's time consuming. I take a lot of vendor calls personally. I know how time consuming it is.
Sales folks.
I know how time consuming it is, but through that process, you do stay up to date with potential vendors you might be interested in, because they might not be coming to you through your traditional channels, through your partners. And that is a risk, but that's a fact of business, unfortunately. And those PSLs exist for a reason. There might be deals in place, there might be all sorts of things, all sorts of valid reasons why the business is structured the way it is. So innovation-wise, you've got to just allow a portion of your time to focus on that. And understand that we're in a world where it's an ecosystem of logos and they're changing. So I think it requires sensitivity on the part of the client too.
Right. I think we're kind of out of time. If there's a quick question, a quick answer, we're good. Oh, we're good. Well, Matt's here. Right. Well, I'd like to personally thank the panelists for getting up and being pretty open with us today. Learned a lot. I hope you've enjoyed it. So to Martin, Nick, Hossein, and Danny.
Thank you, Martin. Great job.